Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Diving deep into Black Panther Wakanda Forever, we're stepping out of the airlock and into Talocan to discuss the latest installment of the MCU, the last film in Phase 4, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Here we go, the last film in Marvel's Phase 4, which is a wild thing to say. It opens in Wakanda. We're in Shuri's lab. The princess is frantically trying to synthesize a replacement for the heart-shaped herb, which was destroyed by Killmonger, of course, after he seized power in the first film. And Shuri needs this because T'Challa is terminally ill. The herb is his only chance to survive. She pushes through a formula to production. It's maybe only 30% effective, Griot, her AI, tells her. But before she can rush it to the king's bedside, Queen Ramonda appears and the king has passed. You know, this was the big question, right? Was how are they going to handle it? And I thought they handled it with appropriate grace and real sadness. I mean, there was a real sadness in it.
And there is a space within this for the actors and the friends of Chadwick to mourn Chadwick while mourning T'Challa. After this, we get this huge, funeral scene. It's a celebration. It's a mourning. And then, boom, a year later. And we see the fallout.
1 year later, French commandos are raiding a Wakandan science facility. They force the workers there to open up a vault, but it is a trap. Stride Okoye, Ayo, Aneka, and other Dora Milaje who are disguised as the scientists there, and they easily best these commandos. Later, at a closed session of the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, American and French officials are just tearing into Queen Ramonda. They are saying that Wakanda has not lived up to its obligations to the international community. I guess Wakanda had promised to share vibranium technology at some point in
the end of Black Panther, and this is one of the spanners that was thrown into the works with everything, like the tragedies that happened during the two movies. The end of Black Panther opens with this idea of Wakanda being a nation that will be open, will be part of the global community, will share technology, was going to open a STEM school in Oakland. That was influenced by Killmonger. But that doesn't mean we're going to give you vibranium. But it doesn't mean we're going to give you vibranium. And also, greedy. They're greedy, and it's going to cause a big problem for everyone.
Now, of course, vibranium, as we are going to see over the course of this movie and as we saw in Black Panther, it's a wonder substance. It's not only a metal, right? It has a staggering number of applications. It's easily workable. It can be an indestructible substance, but it can also absorb, store, and amplify energy. It can give people superpowers, on and on and on and on. And the rest of the world is like, hey, share this stuff. And Wakanda, rightly, has said no.
Yeah, especially because they keep talking about how it can be used to make weapons. They're acting like
that's what they would love to do.
Scares them. But really, that's what they want it for. They want to make weapons of mass destruction with Wakanda, with vibranium.
And the Queen says, we're not going to do that because the rest of the world can't be trusted with vibranium. Whether Wakanda has ever actually, again, formally agreed to share this substance, unclear, but would love to learn more about why the world thinks this, whatever the case. We all understand she made the right decision, and certainly the world does when she then parades the captured commandos into the hall. The chastened French ambassador, it's unclear whether the French ambassador would have had any idea that this was happening.
It's unclear who it is, but they say that it was someone who was from a member state.
Right.
The French ambassador who'd been kind of really pushing for this
is like, oh shit, I guess we've done bad stuff. And the Queen promises a harsh response if the world ever again violates Wakandan sovereignty. Later, somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, there is a boat of CAA scientists protected by, as Tony might say, JSOC guys, and they have discovered a deposit of vibranium deep under the ocean. It is, at this point, the only known deposit of the material outside of Wakanda. Scientists in diving suits are going in for a closer look, but soon mysterious warriors are appearing out of the waves, and one of these with wings on his feet snatches a helicopter out of the air, hurls it into the sea, and we're led to believe that all the scientists, everybody on this boat, has been neutralized, aka killed.
And we hear a siren song, and we see these men just throwing themselves off the ocean, off the boat.
It's not just a brute attack. These people are able to somehow take over people's minds and draw them into the water.
Sonic hypnotization
like the siren song of ancient Greek mythology,
baby. Yeah. Which, I'm really glad that they're leaning into that because everyone's always said it. It's a merman.
In Wakanda, the queen is worried about her daughter, Princess Shuri. Shuri is taking T'Challa's death very, very hard. She blames herself essentially for not being able to save him. Queen Ramonda takes Shuri to the bush, and there the queen burns her ceremonial funeral gown, and she wants Shuri to do the same, but Shuri can't move on. She can't let go. She says that if anything's going to burn, it's going to be the world, which is alarming. At that moment, a man with winged feet emerges from the river nearby. It's our friend Namor. We get a good look at him now.
He's looking good.
He's looking really, really great. He somehow managed to evade Wakanda's cutting edge border defenses, of which we have seen over the course of various movies by now. He tells them that his nation, Talocan, also has vibranium. They too kept themselves hidden from the world, have kept themselves successfully hidden from the world. But Wakanda's emergence and her decision to reveal the existence of vibranium, the knock-on effect of that is it's awakened the world's greed for vibranium.
And they want to find vibranium. They want to find the source of it for themselves. They want to find new sources, which is going to definitely play in to the future of the MCU.
Absolutely.
As well as just the ramifications of Namor now existing and being rightfully pissed.
So, led by brand new technology that can detect vibranium, the U.S. military has come poking around in the ocean near Talocan's hiding place, and Namor says Wakanda has to take responsibility for the mess that it helped create. Wakanda should ally itself with Talocan and demonstrate that friendship. How? By killing that scientist or capturing that scientist and bringing them to Talocan so that Talocan can then kill the scientist. And it's either that or Namor promises that we're going to attack Wakanda, bring it to its knees. Okay, bye. And then Namor disappears under the water, and he leaves the undersea vibranium detector
mysteriously
for Wakanda to kind of investigate into, to analyze.
Look, I just have to say, he's an old man. He's rightfully angry, in my opinion.
Very angry.
He's coming to them with a little bit of aggression, but this is the first of many times that Namor makes the correct offer to Wakanda that they should ally themselves. And nobody wants to listen to Namor. And so much of the horror of this movie could be absolutely avoided if Wakanda was just real about the outside world and the strength of allying with Talocan.
We will unpack that later. I think one of the wonderful subtexts of this movie is that Wakandan leadership. Listen, we love the Queen. I love Shuri. T'Challa, may he rest in peace. I do think that specifically post the Wakandan reveal to the world, I think Wakandan decision-making has been spotty at best. But
look, that's the problem of a monarchy, baby. We're going to get into it.
That's the problem of the monarchy. Should we have just been like, okay, Killmonger's the guy now, and I guess we got to do everything he said. I think there should have been
on his side.
I think there needed to be mechanisms by which to say, no, we're not just going to destroy all the heart-shaped herb now. Wait, hold on a second. Anyway,
seems bad.
It seems bad. Okoye gets the identity of the scientist from her contact in the CIA, the Wakanda's man in the CIA, Everett Ross. The CIA agent and colonizer has been feeding Okoye intelligence for years, apparently. The scientist's name is Riri Williams, a 19-year-old student at MIT. Shuri, against the Queen's wishes, goes with Okoye on the ostensibly snatch and grab, a kidnapping mission, right? But Shuri is saying, hey, I'm a brilliant scientist also. Maybe I can talk to this person and convince them to help us, actually. They confront Riri. The sudden appearance of a princess of Wakanda and a general of the Wakandan military lets Riri know that actually this is very serious. Like, Riri is very concerned that, like, oh shit, did I piss off Wakanda? Yeah. What do you think? You invented something that could detect vibranium.
One of my favorite things is that she's like, did you make this for the CIA? Shuri asks her, like, why did you do that? And she's like, no, I made it for homework. I made it for my metallurgy class. Like, that lets you know that Riri is one of the most intelligent people in the Marvel universe, in the MCU. She did this. She created this thing as a homework assignment. It just took her a couple of months. It wasn't even that deep.
And one of the concerns raised by the ambassadors to the UN is that this vibranium cannot be detected by any existing technology. Metal detectors don't pick it up. You can use it. You can make a bomb out of vibranium and then just walk it into the airport, right? But here, Riri Williams has figured out a way to detect vibranium. So this is a big deal. She takes Shuri and Okoye to her lab nearby, but before she can show them her research into the vibranium detector, the FBI surrounds the building. There's a big chase with Shuri and Okoye, on the streets, and Riri in her homebrew Stark Tech inspired Ironheart Mark I battle suit, which gets its debut here. The Talocan ambush our trio of heroes. Okoye's fighting skills are world-class, of course, but the Talocan are super humanly strong, very, very hard to kill. And Shuri ends up convincing them to take her captive along with Riri to their king so that she can argue for Riri's life. Rosie, tell us more about Riri Williams.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an exciting addition because this is probably one of, if not the quickest transitions we've seen from a character being introduced. Riri was introduced in 2016's Invincible Iron Man #7 from Volume 3, created by Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Deodato. So that's only 6 years between then and now, her making her MCU debut. In then, she's kind of like what we see in the movie, though in the comics she was a little bit younger. She was 15. She was an MIT student, super genius, who in the comics built her own version of Tony Stark's Mark 41 suit as a pet project. And she did that while he was missing, presumed dead, and he was actually undercover in Madripoor. And that was in the lead up to Road to Civil War 2, and she would eventually appear in that event. She was in some other comics that were tied to it, like Guardians of the Galaxy, but wouldn't debut as Ironheart until the first issue of the 4th volume of Invincible Iron Man, which was that famous cover where she's in the suit and it says, Ironheart on the cover. That story stuck to this idea. She's from Chicago. It's got a little bit of an early Miles Morales-ness to it, aka her story was it leaned into some tropes. She'd been in trouble at school. The police were going to arrest her because she'd, I will say, salvaged the parts to make the Ironheart suit. So really, the version of Riri that we are seeing now is the Eve Ewing expanded, holistic version that was introduced in the 2018 solo Ironheart series with originally drawn by Kevin Libranda and then Luciano Vecchio, and Jeffo did some pencils and layouts. And that was where Ironheart became a Marvel legend. That was the story that made people fall in love with her. That was the story that showed that she was a super genius who was also a normal teenager who had this unbelievable relationship with Tony Stark. That was this mentorship, this beautiful space where she could be the smartest, most impressive version of herself with someone who was her peer. We know in the MCU Tony is dead. R.I.P. Sorry to that man. But in Eve's Ironheart story, in issue 9, Tony arranges for Riri to visit Shuri in Wakanda, and obviously what we're seeing in the movie here is leaning more into that. Riri's relationship is not one of a mentor with Tony in the MCU. It is one of a burgeoning partnership and alliance with Wakanda, with Shuri, with one of the only people in the whole of the MCU who can go toe-to-toe with her on an intelligence level. And it's very exciting to just see her be thrown into this wild world. And as you said, about to go to Talocan.
In a vast cavern under the ocean, Shuri meets Kukulkan, who the Talocanil worship as their god and whose enemies call Namor. And when Namor explains the origin of his name, I was like, whoever came up with this is the smartest person.
Yeah. 10 out
today.
of 10.
10 out of 10.
Unbelievable.
We will get to that.
Yeah, just one of the coolest origin of a name. One of the most smart recontextualizations, which this series, the Black Panther movies, have been known for.
Yeah.
But it's like gasp out loud good.
It was amazing. So he tells Shuri of the history of himself and his people. Over 500 years ago, native people around what is now called the Yucatan Peninsula were dying of smallpox brought to the land by Spanish conquistadors. One of the shamans of the indigenous people has a vision that leads them to find a plant in a cavern underwater.
Looks very much like the
heart-shaped herb, right?
It's
slightly different in color, maybe a little blue in color, but looks to be the same. And the people create a kind of potion out of this plant. They ingest it. It protects them against the smallpox, but it also turns their skin blue and takes away from them the ability to breathe air, but gives them the ability to breathe underwater. Namor's mother, who is pregnant at the time, had to be persuaded to take the plant, but she does, and her child is born with amazing abilities that are beyond what the Talocanil have, and he becomes the leader, the king, the god, in fact, to his people. Years later, following his mother's dying wish, Kukulkan returns to his mother's human village to lay her remains to rest, and there he finds that the Spanish have enslaved the local indigenous people. In retribution, he slays them, and
he's
priest...
like 8, by the way. Like
he
looks like he's like 8, but he's probably
he...
like 50 or something. Like,
right.
But he looks like a baby.
Yeah, so he slays the conquistadors, and as one dying priest looks upon him, with fear, the priest says that this boy describes the boy as El Niño Sin Amor, the boy without love, and from this Namor, Kukulkan takes his name of war, and I was like, holy shit, that's good.
It's so clever, and my favorite thing about it is, like, at first it sounds a little bit like emo, and it's kind of like he has no love because his heart's broken and his mother is not there.
But he has no love for the surface world.
He has no love for the surface world. That's like the hardest shit in the MCU.
I could not believe it.
Good. I'm just obsessed.
So good, yes.
And to be able to recontextualize, like, we haven't even really gotten in. Namor is, one of Marvel's oldest characters, debuted in like 1939, and has throughout history been entangled in some of the more problematic and racist depictions of characters of color, and like Marvel's own fear of especially like Asian communities and this idea of an Asian superpower. And ironically, some of that actually makes the old Namor stuff, some of the panels are quite radical, and you see this kind of like interesting subversion of what they
time to wage war against the white race.
Yeah, like he's on his mission to kill the white man or whatever. Like, but I love that they took this name that was given to him, the Submariner Namor. Always been quite a character of people been like, oh, he's wearing some pants, he's got wings on he's quite silly, he's quite campy. And to create an origin for that name that is so directly linked to this brilliant recontextualization and this what feels very authentic to the conversations that are being had and the realities of the horror of colonialism is just so cool. Like that is just a level of craft and detail in writing that just cannot go uncelebrated. So I'm glad I'm glad we brought it up. It's so good.
Beautiful. The Queen travels to Haiti, where Nakia is running a school. She has lived there apparently since the blip. Devastated by T'Challa's death, she just couldn't bring herself to return to Wakanda, not even for his funeral. The Queen convinces Nakia to bring back her super spy skills and track down Princess Shuri, who is missing and in the hands of the Talocan. Meanwhile, Everett Ross's new boss, the Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, is all over his ass. The CIA director wants Riri found. She wants to know how the Wakandans, because who else would do this, tracked her down. And the Contessa also wants to start thinking about how we can respond, how we can start destabilizing Wakanda. Also, she's Ross's ex-wife, which is a shocker.
Interesting. Very,
very interesting.
Her romantic entanglement was with Nick Fury.
Nicholas
and we were
Fury.
very interested to see if that was going to come up. But it seems that they've decided to do like these little CIA romance. Terrible. Hate it for both of them. But you know what? Ross comes out of this looking better out of the pair.
I will say also, in the annals of We Were Right, it's not quite We Were Right, but over the course of this movie, our theory that the Contessa's plan is to create the superhero team that follows orders,
yes.
is burnished by her actions in this movie.
Yeah, and we definitely got some We Were Right stuff that we got into, but that's true. Also very interesting. Something I was wary about that we've talked about is like the Thunderbolts has to be a villain team. It doesn't really make sense otherwise, but the way that they built in, I understand the expanding this Black Panther universe to have to fit into the rest of the MCU, I think is some of the stuff people have been struggling the most with like the focus on Ross and Contessa, and I totally agree. But what I did really like, credit to Ryan and his co-scripter, she's a villain. Like, no question,
flat out.
Absolute villain. I feel like in the TV shows they were doing more of a, is she just like a different way of running things? But no, she's the director of the CIA,
yes.
And she sucks.
She's putting together the Avengers team, quote unquote Avengers team, that is soldiers, that are people that will just like decapitate people in the street. Yeah. Ross finds Shuri's beads, communication beads, under some wreckage at the attack site in Boston, and he uses them to warn the Queen that the U.S. government might be preparing to do something, to move against Wakanda in some sort of way. In Talocan, under the sea, Namor takes Shuri to Talocan, and the culture and the beauty of the place and the obvious strength and the unity of its people just blows her away. She asks the king if she can take Riri back to Wakanda, and she promises that there she's going to advocate strongly on Talocan's behalf. Namor is like, I've got a counter deal. Wakanda allies itself with Talocan, and side by side, we wage war against the nations of the surface world.
And he makes some good points.
And
he says,
defang them so they can never again threaten either of us.
And enslave us and oppress us.
Yeah, enslave us and take our resources, etc. Colonize us.
Shuri's
do
not
that and Riri may live.
I feel like this is a character beat that I understand for the movie's sake, but I do feel like Shuri would be the one person who would be most open to this, but she is quite horrified because she's like, well, lots of people didn't do anything bad up there, and I don't know if we would want to do that.
Allying, I think, is a good idea. Waging war against the entire surface world, which is very in line with Namor's character history and a thing that he has done time and time again in the comics for various reasons. Some of them actually pretty just reasons. Like, I get it. There are other ways to do it. Like, I don't need, to Shuri's credit, the idea of just jumping straight out to a state of active warfare against the entire world, probably not a great idea. But also, you can see how this is going to lead the nations of the world to hate superpowered people like Namor,
who, by the way,
are mutants.
I was going to say, we should say this. We should say this. We've heard the word mutation. We've been waiting for someone to be called a mutant. Namor says I was a mutant. He says, I am a mutant. He says the word he means in the context
and by the
of
way,
his
500.
Community.
Yes.
And the truth is that, Jason, you really smartly brought this up in pre-pro, but like Namor is not the only mutant. He might see himself that way because he is a mutant in comparison to his people, who he can be above land, he can be underwater. They can only exist under the water. But his whole community are mutants, and apparently got that mutation
mutated by the
from a
plant.
vibranium-rich soil and the plant, which allowed them to become mutants. This is very interesting, and I think there is a world where we see that come into play down the line to introduce more mutated characters. We know that we're not going to get an Inhumans in this world. Miss Marvel kind of proved that we're not there yet. This is going to be a mutant situation. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a version of the plant or a vibranium-rich soil or something that could be turned into some kind of mist, almost like a Terrigen mist, and weaponized to create multiple mutants.
Because I think what we're seeing, they didn't kind of spell this out, but my guess for why Namor has his abilities is he had the X gene just passed to him by his parents, right? And something about the active ingredient in this plant, this vibranium-based plant, awakened that and supercharged his powers. All of which is to say, mutants are here, and they are here now in vast numbers in the form of the Talocan.
We're talking about thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people, maybe more, living in Talocan.
As a symbol of Namor's word, right? And, the generosity of his offer, in his view, he gives Shuri a bracelet, which is woven from the very plant which gave the Talocan their powers.
That belonged to his mother. So this is a very intimate moment. And I will say, they must have chemistry tested the fuck out of Letitia and Tenoch, who plays Namor, because there is such an unbelievable spark between them, these children of these hidden nations.
A respect.
It's respect, but there's like
a bond.
There's a bond, but there's like a slight flirtation, but it's not necessarily romantic. It's more of it's like they spark each other's curiosity. And the whole time I was watching it, I was just thinking, like, when Sue Storm comes into the MCU, Tenoch is gonna be, it's happening. Do it in the first movie. It needs to be there because that is the way that they play with that relationship. His performance is the standout for me in this film.
He's amazing.
Mind blowing. He establishes
everything
this
you want.
Charisma, this danger, this relatability,
arrogance, like real arrogance,
but based on like legit,
like
reasons.
just
like,
for a just reason,
but also because he is probably the most powerful person on Earth, apart from, as he will learn, like the Black Panther, I was just blown away by him, and the Talocan stuff was really my favorite part of this movie. And I just kept thinking about him and Letitia were so good together in those small moments that they had. I was like, I need to see him with Sue Storm. I need to see him break up the marriage, because Shuri's stronger person than me. I would have been like, yes, let's do the war. I'm cool with it, man.
And we should add, unless we find out that Apocalypse is out here, which might be the case, right? This is the first mutant. This is the first mutant.
And they not just that, they made him 500 years old. So you're talking about a first mutant. It's not 100 years old, not 120 years old. This is a mutant who has lived in what is essentially a secluded secret society. We were right. Secret societies are a huge deal going into Secret Wars. And not only that, but he potentially has a Morlocks-esque community of secret mutants. So look, all we're saying is this is a secret society of mutants that nobody knew about, even in the age of the Avengers. So there's probably other secret societies of mutants that are hidden in this world.
Well, 500 years, this also, in the comics, Namor has this whole history before his appearance, fighting the Fantastic Four, in the Silver Age of comics, as a fighter in World War II, all of which is to say is 500 years gives you a lot of back centuries that they could fill in various ways. Is this the first time that Namor has interacted with the surface world? I'm going to guess not. I'm going to guess there's other things that we're going to find out that he has been involved in. Later, Nakia, having discovered the site of Namor's mother's village, finds out where Shuri and Riri have been taken, and she gets there, goes under the sea to the cavern where they're being held, and she goes to break them out. She kills 2 Talocan guards in the process, and Shuri is like, oh my God, we got to save this person's life. And Nakia is like, no, we have to leave right now. And Shuri knows that to take the lives of 2 Talocan like this means that war between the Talocan and Wakanda is going to happen.
And in Shuri's defense, I love this. This is a true moment of leadership. She tries to use the Kimoa beads to save the lives of the Talocan guards. And in one of the few mistakes that Nakia makes, because she's generally like one of the smartest people in Wakanda, she doesn't listen to Shuri. And that is like a heartbreaking moment because it leads to this kind of huge conflict that could have been avoided.
Now, Wakanda steels itself for the blow, but when Namor arrives, the most advanced nation of the surface world, their defenses are completely worthless against only a handful of Namor's warriors. Tidal waves devastate the capital city. Talocan warriors leap from the backs of whales to lay waste to the streets. But all of this is a distraction to allow Namor to strike at Queen Ramonda. She gives her life to save Riri, and it's a heartbreaking moment. Shuri finds her mother now passed, like this has just happened moments before, and Namor tells Shuri, mourn your dead, I'll be back in a week. You're queen now. It's your decision about how to lead the nation next. I'll be back with your decision about whether you're going to ally with my people. And if the answer is no, just so you know, when I come back in a week, it's going to be at the head of my entire army, not just a handful of my warriors. As queen, Shuri just wants vengeance. We heard it, earlier in the movie that she wanted the world to burn because of her feelings of the surrounding the death of T'Challa, and now this has sharpened those feelings to a really keen, killing, and dangerous edge. M'Baku tries to talk her out of it. The Wakandans, he notes that the Talocan consider Namor their god. If you kill their god, the war will never end. The war will be existential. It will be my children, my children's children.
It's
it will go on and it will go on and on and on until one of our nations perishes. Yeah. And Shuri's like, that's fine.
She's like, I think wasn't my mother worth it? And also, just want to shout out Winston Duke. So good. M'Baku, still a standout. There's a great standout. One of the best moments, like the biggest laugh moments in this really somber movie is like he walks into the council eating a carrot and calls Okoye a bald-headed demon. And it is like our whole cinema just lost its shit. Like I want to see more M'Baku. I love him. I love that recontextualization of the character. Winston Duke, you are king. Thank you. And without Winston Duke, I don't know if we would have got like thick Namor. I feel like
we would have got like this cut Hemsworthian potentially.
Winston changed the idea of like what a Marvel character can look like, and people love him for it, and he's delightful, and I'm just so happy that Namor is more in that mold of like a chunky, strong guy. We need more of them.
Using the bracelet that Namor gave her, she successfully synthesizes, a kind of heart-shaped herb based on the Talocan plant, which is a biochemical twin of the heart-shaped herb. She takes that potion herself and goes to visit the ancestral plane, but it's not the ancestral plane. She finds herself in the flooded throne room, a version, the ancestral plane version of that destroyed
Very interesting
throne room
that she
in the
wakes
Wakandan
up
capital city. Yeah,
and she wakes up underwater after using the Talocan plant. I think that we cannot underestimate.
That's a great point.
The importance of this essentially being a combined version of the heart-shaped herb and whatever the plant of the Talocan is. I'm very interested to see where that leads.
She finds herself in the throne room. she's behind the throne. Someone's sitting in it. She walks to the front of it, and we're thinking it's going to be the Queen or it's going to be T'Challa. It's Killmonger.
Oh, my cinema just absolutely lost its mind last night. Like screaming. That's the big, the Spider-Man. There were so many of those moments. Yeah. This is that moment where people just lost their mind. Michael B. Jordan delivering as always. And I love the reasoning of him being there.
Yeah. And Killmonger knows that Shuri wanted to see him.
That's why he's there. She chose.
And he knows it's because he is the one person who will agree with what she wants to do next, which is wipe out the Talocan. Namor must die. And when she wakes up, Nakia's like, where'd you go? Who'd you see? What'd you talk? What was the ancestral plane like? Who'd you talk to? And Shuri's like, I'm not talking about it.
She's like, I failed. And then she just smashes up the lab and obviously has super strength. So it's like, I think it worked, babe.
Yeah, it worked. Valentina breaks into Everett Ross's house to arrest him. She had the beads bugged from the very beginning. She heard everything Ross has told the Wakandans. And Ross is like, yeah, well, the Wakandans are awesome. And they saved my life. And they're right. So I guess I'm going to jail. Ross says it would be terrible to imagine what the United States, what other countries would do, but specifically the United States would do if it controlled vibranium all by itself. And the Contessa is like, well, you're going to prison for the rest of your life. And by the way, I dream of a day when we control vibranium.
That's when
we can do whatever we want with vibranium.
It's the villain moment. She's obsessed with power. She's obsessed with owning this resource, with colonizing Wakanda, and with using it for her own nefarious means.
A very juicy and vibrant plot from various Marvel comics throughout the years. Like, the world is greedy for the resources that Wakanda has.
And I think as well, I'm not a huge fan of Everett Ross in the MCU, but I do think this scene is the closest we've gotten to the Christopher Priest stuff that we talk about in the Omnibus. Yep. Where it's about Ross understanding who the Wakandans are, his awakening to them, and the sacrifice that he will make because he realizes what the right thing to do is. I feel like that has been mostly a misunderstanding of his character in the MCU, but this is the closest I feel like that we get in this moment.
Shuri, now clad as the Black Panther, leads her people to war, and her plan is to take Riri's detector out to sea, use it as bait to lure the Talocan to attack, and then they'll trap Namor inside like a flying microwave, and they will dry his ass out. Here's where I just want to put a pin in this and discuss it. So, again, I think Wakanda needs better leadership at times.
It needs a democracy.
I think some of the decision-making process is not good. And I would like to highlight that Riri's plan is to fight the fish people on water.
They could have literally just fought him on a different bit of land that wasn't Wakanda. Like, they could have just, you didn't need to fight him on water where all his people are coming. They got crazy underwater technology. They have these something that is really cool that this movie introduces, and I think is very unique, is these water bombs that kind of explode.
They're really cool.
It's really cool. I will say, if you enjoy the Namor stuff here, you enjoy the Talocan, please go and watch James Wan's Aquaman, because I do feel like this movie would not exist without that, and a lot of the stuff they do in that movie is definitely influential. But I really felt like the idea of this Talocan technology and the bombs and everything is very unique and very visually beautiful. But why did she want to fight him at the sea? I guess I
get that you had to lure him, but
you know what?
Fight him on the sea?
I think the idea of and this is something I would have liked to see expanded a little bit, but it leans into Shuri's comic book canon, especially the run when she becomes Black Panther. The Reginald Hudlin run. She is at this point not making sensible decisions. She's
angry.
Absolutely
She's
obsessed
very, very
with
angry.
revenge.
Yeah.
She's consumed with it, and that leads her to make this very silly decision that does kind of end up working out.
It
but
kind of works.
Not a great idea.
Well, it kind of works. I would add, So there's a big battle, right? They go out to sea. The Talocan are alerted to the presence of this vibranium detector in the water. News gets to Namor. He leads his forces against them. Riri debuts the Ironheart Mark II,
which she was building in a montage scene in
very
Wakanda.
Powerful. Looks super cool.
Probably made of vibranium.
Yeah, probably made of vibranium. Okoye and NECA fight in 2 brand new Shuri designed pieces of Wakandan battle armor. Also clearly like vibranium tech, very powerful. Shuri gets Namor in the microwave, and the two get separated from the main fight, where Okoye, Ayo, NECA, M'Baku, and the rest of the Wakandans are at sea, trapped on their ship, fighting off the Talocan. And I should add that, though Shuri's plan kind of works. What, like 800 Wakandans die in this? Like,
I was going to say,
they get wiped out. There's like
by the end,
14
there's like 12,
Wakandans left.
I was going to say there's like 12 people who say Wakanda forever, and I'm like, babe, you could have avoided
you
all
lost
of
like
this.
800 people.
Also, I know you could have made more of that armor for like the Midnight Angel or whatever it was called. It's not the best plan.
So Shuri's microwave plane crashes in the desert because Namor, even in a weakened state, is extremely powerful.
He has a spear made of raw vibranium, not processed, and he uses it to crash the plane.
And he's potentially, again, like as strong as the Hulk in the water, probably stronger. I guess the Hulk theoretically could get as strong as he wants, the angrier he gets. But like Hulk level, class 100 level strength.
And his Namor, they mentioned this very briefly, but I think it's really interesting. Namor is covered in vibranium. They always say that. Everything that he wears, his jewels, his kind of costume, whatever it is, that's all covered in vibranium. So he has a similar energy signature power kind of vibe to a Black Panther who is wearing a vibranium suit.
So they fight in the desert, and it is a brutal fight, but even a dried out, partially weakened Namor is incredibly powerful, more powerful than the Black Panther. He impales her on his vibranium spear and then goes to stagger back to sea. Shuri frees herself, and the two square off again. We get Namor saying "Imperious Rex" in his language, and it was like,
that's his famous comic book battle cry. That's always been like it's iconic because everyone's like, "What does that even mean?" And they only really like got into it recently, but this shows the absolute power of this movie, which is this word, these combination of words that's so comic booky and so pulpy. When Tenoch says it in the Talocan language and looks towards the screen, it feels just like, fuck, like we're seeing something unbelievable here.
Shuri, then, you think they're going to fight again, but then Shuri crosses arms, says Wakanda forever, and she triggers the blasters of her crashed ship, like the thrusters, and just bakes Namor in flame.
Very brutal.
Some baked fish here, maybe with a little breadcrumb on top. It'd be delicious. Shuri then stands over Namor. He could die, potentially, right now. Just as Killmonger, the moment that Killmonger described in her vision in the ancestral plane. It's here now. Shuri then reflects on everything that she has lost, and she hears the Queen telling her that now she needs to show Namor who she is.
And this is a huge deal because Shuri doesn't believe the ancestral plane exists. She barely believes that the Killmonger thing was real. She just thinks it's something she needed to see. And we see Ramonda in the traditional ancestral plane talking to Shuri saying, show him who you are.
She stands over him and she makes him this offer. She as queen, ally Wakanda with the Talocan. The Wakandans will protect the seas for the Talocan, protect the surface, around where Talocan is.
Will keep their secrets.
But Namor must yield, promise to stop pursuing Riri, and promise to not wage war against the surface world. Namor yields, and the Talocan return home.
Yeah, this is one of my most powerful, chills moments. They fly down, the the Wakandans are about to be killed. There's only like 14 of them left. And Namor and Shuri come down on this plane together, and they sort of, they say
800 Wakandans fucking dead.
Dead. And they say like Talocan rise, Wakanda forever, and Talocan go home. This shows really, I have to say, on your point, the monarchy of Wakanda has a problem, yeah? Because the real truth is, Shuri could have avoided that 800 deaths by just having a little convo, making this offer before something, I feel like. But I understand that Namor needed to see the strength of the Black Panther.
He needed to see that
they were
strength and resolve.
Ally. But still, R.I.P. to those Wakandans. I will say this.
It will be a problem going forward. There will be hardline factions of both the Talocan and the Wakandans who go, that's it? No, this is not over. Some Wakandans are going to say, we lost how many soldiers and now we just let it go.
And
no,
Queen
we're
Ramonda.
going to pursue this. They attacked our capital city. We lost the queen and now 800 soldiers dead. No, we're pursuing this to the end. So this is going to be an issue going forward. Wakanda rebuilds. Riri returns to MIT, but the Ironheart armor has to stay in Wakanda. That's pretty wise. Nakia returns to Haiti. In Talocan, Namor is giving Namor shit for kneeling to the Wakandans, and he's like, no, trust me, this is fucking great, because here's why. We're allied with the strongest nation of the surface world by far, and one day the rest of the surface world is going to attack Wakanda.
They're isolated. They have no friends.
We're their only friend, and they will wage war against Wakanda. And when that happens, Wakanda and Talocan together will defeat the surface world.
Love that. Great plan.
Shuri blows off her official coronation at Warrior Falls to go to Haiti, and there she burns her funeral garb, just as her mother wanted her to. In America, Okoye frees Everett Ross from custody. He is coming back to Wakanda with everyone. And in the stinger, in Haiti, Shuri burns her funeral garb, and Nakia introduces her to her son, T'Challa's son, Prince T'Challa, who looks to be about 6 years old.
Very emotional, beautiful cinematography, great performances. My biggest takeaway is Namor. I absolutely adored the Talocan stuff. I really want to know more about Namor. I think it set him up as a true, we talked about this before, but Killmonger is right was such a huge thing coming off Black Panther. I feel like with Namor, it's like 5,000 times stronger argument, and I wish there'd been a little bit more Namor. I think she's incredible. Also very ironic because a lot of the inspiration here was probably taken from Namor #1, the original introduction of that character from the Golden Age, set in a Mayan underground secret society. They worship a god, Kukulkan, so a lot of inspiration was taken from that. I'd like to see more of Namor, but I like that conflict they set up between the two of them, where he might end up as more of the Charles and she ends up as more of the Magneto. Also, will say, look, I love the X-Men, yeah, but I feel like currently Namor is really gonna be that Magneto style figure for the MCU going forward. He has that direct action, the politics are right. The way that he will approach it is not going to make everyone happy. Yeah, very emotional, great performances, beautiful cinematography, and Namor, I love you. I'm so excited to see more.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited for more Namor. Next, more Wakanda Forever in the Airlock.